This is Coach's Corner, where grassroots football matters. Message us at officialBOTN and get involved in the debate.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Coach's Corner on a Friday night. I hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a good week and made the best of everything, and now relaxing on your Friday night and watching us. We're here for however long it takes tonight. I like a Friday night. I love a Friday night show. It's more relaxed. It's a bit more chilled. And tonight we're going to continue what we started on Tuesday, which was looking at attacking fullbacks. We're going to switch things round and we're going to look at defending against attacking fullbacks. We talked on Tuesday all about Liverpool and how well they've played that system for the last 2 years. But, and there was a but, and that was that they've just maybe been found out in a way that people are starting to learn how to defend against them. And I'm delighted to say that Mr. Peter Augustine joins me tonight. Pete, hello, good evening, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well out there, and being locked away is not affecting you too much.
Yeah, I must say as well, always like to just apologise. This week's been a bit crazy, so we've done loads of shows, and we're getting used to some new technology and all that kind of stuff. So apologies for being just a little bit late. We'll make it worth your while, I promise. Okay, tonight we want you to get involved in this show. Coach's Corner is for everybody across the grassroots and semi-professional, professional game. And we want to create the biggest coaching football show in the UK. That's what we want to do. And we need you to be a part of that. So if you want to get involved, if you've got any questions, if you've got any thoughts, if you've got anything that you want to ask, please do throughout the show. We'll read as many comments out as we can. And we'll also get your comments onto the screen. And I think it's fair to say, Pete, we had a little bit of a chat about this today, that on a Friday night especially, we want that relaxed feel. We want to get coaches involved, and we want to do it in the spare of the moment almost, some of the show. If people have got questions, let's say, how do I create a session for under 12s using 2 forwards? We want to try and answer those questions, and we will do that. We'll do the best we can.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we will do. I think the important thing to remember with all this is that will we have all the answers? Probably not. Maybe sometimes some of the things we say will resonate with people. But the whole idea is that can we spark a little bit of interest and intrigue into coaches?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we want to do, and that's why we say we want you to ask questions. That's what it's all about. Okay, tonight we started looking at attacking fullbacks. We did a piece on Liverpool on Tuesday, and we did say that we were going to come to part 2, which was that you can defend against this. And a lot of clubs, let's just say, a lot of clubs now are doing that. They're doing it quite well. They're forcing Liverpool to think a little bit more. And they've kind of got, is it fair to say, Pete, got to grips with how Liverpool play?
I think it's too early to say, really. I think there are a couple of teams who've given Liverpool a bit of a scare. Obviously, Atletico in the Champions League and Watford, and probably I looked at both of those games and I looked more at the Watford game and saw kind of what Watford did, and it was quite interesting. What Watford did to them and how they did it to them. And I had a conversation today with a good friend of mine, Anthony, and we talked about how Liverpool pulled people out of those from the edge of the area and getting behind them. And we kind of spoke about that, and we'll talk about Watford and what Watford did, and also a little bit about what Atletico did as well. But also the wider aspect of defending against attacking fullbacks, and what skill sets do the players who are defending against that type of offence will have to try to employ, and how you might look at that at earlier ages as well.
Yeah, I think we get straight into it and we have a look. We've got your wonderful tactical pad, should we call it, that you're going to bring up and you're going to show us a little bit about how to defend against. Let's start with Liverpool. So in particular, Liverpool, and how we might go about defending against them, because as we said on Tuesday, they really do play with the fullbacks far up the pitch, and they create space using those forwards. So when we talk about defending against a team like Liverpool, we're not just talking about stopping Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. We're talking as well about stopping the front three and the movement, because that's where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that you can't just talk about one thing in isolation. And I think that can be where the conversations can go. You talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson. You start saying, oh yeah, they're such good players and they do this and they do that. But there's other people in the team that actually allow them to do that. So I think that's something that we have to be aware of when we start to talk about how Liverpool play, because I think we can forget that the rest of the team contribute to the way that they do play.
So let's we'll get the screen up here. We're just setting up some. You can see Pete set up the Liverpool team, and we're going to get some of those onto the pitch. So this is what we're trying to do here, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is just have a bit of an understanding of things that go on in the Premier League. That's first and foremost. That's where people see a lot of their football. We will also use examples in the Championship, I'm sure. And the reason we use these examples are because it is something that everybody playing at the grassroots level can relate to. So that's important to note to start with. We see a lot of analysis across the football game on Liverpool, on the Premier League, on Manchester United, on City, and a lot of stuff that's done around this. But where we want to be different is we want to take examples from the professional game and show you just how you might put that into practice with a practice session. And we'll come on to that. And that's what we'll get to tonight. We'll have an actual practice session for you to take away on defending against attacking fullbacks. But as Pete said, also looking at the movement of the front three, which really enables that to happen, Pete.
Yeah. So, right. Okay. So one of the things that's really important about this is that, you can actually overcomplicate any session that you want to put on. But first of all, let's have a look at Liverpool. So, and I'm going to look at them from the point of view of when they're in these areas here, as we were talking about the other day. So, if I start off without having the defenders in.
Sorry, Pete. I'm just going to get you to move that little screen at the top off the pitch.
What, this one here?
Yeah, we'll just get that off the pitch, just in case. Liverpool like to use a lot of space, so
they do. Yeah.
We'll just can we move it up so it's not covering the goal?
Yeah, let's see.
I'm getting Pete to do all sorts of technical stuff here.
You shouldn't really be doing this to me, to be quite honest.
It's fine up in the top right hand corner. We just move it up to the top right. There we go.
Right. Okay. Let's try some old fashioned stuff here.
So we're not only testing Pete's technology out, we're also getting him to talk through the Liverpool lineup that's on the screen at the moment. You plugging in a new device, Pete? There we go. Perfect.
Right, here we go. I'm going to use something that I don't know if you've heard of one of these. It's called a mouse.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there we go. Yeah, make a note of that, everybody. A mouse.
Not many people know about this. And I've managed to get one. Yeah, very difficult to get hold of.
It's looking nice.
Now, yeah. So now, when you start to think about if we go back and we get the ball, so Liverpool they can get the ball anywhere. That's the thing about them. They'll get the ball anywhere, and they'll play into these areas. Say, for example, but what they're really looking to do is to go straight into here and here. They don't waste a lot of time if they can help it. Going out wide just for going out wide's sake. This is like getting the ball out here. It's like, well, okay, if you're going to sit inside these areas here, we're going to pull you out here and get you to come back into these areas, and that's where we'll attack you in the space behind here. So then, when you start to put the the opposition in there. Right, okay, let's put some oppo in here. Okay, so we start to look at teams will always try, if best that they can, to play deep and have a low block against Liverpool, which is, you can understand why.
Can you explain that though? Just explain that, why you do that against Liverpool.
Well, because the thing about it is, because they've got so much pace, the one thing you don't want them doing is running at you and getting in behind you. Because once they're in behind you, that's it. You know, they've got so much pace that you're really going to struggle against that. So, as I was saying earlier, if we've got a back four in, what will happen is, say Mane might or Salah, forgive me if they're on the wrong side, but they might come into these areas here, pulling the fullback out, and then you've got to think about, well, if they come in here and the fullback wants to get tight, that's where these two overlapping fullbacks will get into this area here. Now, what will happen is sometimes they'll be used as a decoy. The other fullback might be in here, and say Salah or Mane or Firmino, whoever decide however they want to play, they'll do things like that, get round you, use the other midfield players to bounce the ball in here, make little runs, bounce it in, and they'll take you on and pull you about, and then you'll get other midfield players probably running on beyond. You know, the movement from them is so fantastic. I mean, I must admit, I was watching a game and I was like, whoa, you know, where did he come from? You know, there was so much movement in their play that it was actually almost quite scary. But this is what they do to you, and this is why they've had so much success. It's because their movement is so good, because they'll pull you out of these areas in here, and you'll see that their players will drop into these areas as well, which means you're going to have to kind of decide that you're going to come and go with them, which will leave that little space in here. One player falls asleep and the ball can get played through, and then they're in.
So the biggest question here is as we looked at Liverpool attacking on Tuesday, is how do you then set your team up to defend against this?
Okay, so if I was, and I'm only going to say, I'm going to use me, because I don't want to second guess any other coach, because I don't know the thinking behind how teams want to play against Liverpool, and myself having never played against them, all I can do is just suppose. So when I looked at Watford when they played against them, they did something like this. So they went into a deep block. Let's put the players in here if we can. Okay, went into a nice deep block.
And as you said before, a deep block is something that's not so new against Liverpool. A lot of teams have tried that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the thing about it is that they'll be used to that, but they're a very patient side, and that's why having these two attacking fullbacks causes teams a problem. So, and remember what I said the other night. I said that one of the things that they're very good at. If we put, let's just say Mane's here, okay, and let's say Saz. What they'll do is normally they will want to do this. They'll be in here. The team has the low block, and then Firmino normally will come into that area here. Ball get played through into him there, because again they're very good technically, can play in tight areas, etc., and then that is the trigger for some of the other midfield players to get involved. These players will narrow off here, ball gets played in here, then we're out, and then we get in. So what might you do against that? And I did ask the question in a tweet earlier on. Well, what would you do? What would you do as what would other coaches do? and I'd be interested to hear what they feel they might do. So what I saw Watford do was this: they dropped one of their central midfield, their central holding player in that area there, which now means that there is no space for Firmino to come and get the ball in here. So once that happens, it actually means that you could probably engage the ball here. So what they would do is they would allow the ball to go back in here. Deeney would come in here and put a little bit of pressure on in this area here, making play predictable, which means now that Van Dijk either has to go into here or into here. Now, if he goes into here, they'll go and try and win it. Watford went in there and win it and put them under pressure nice and early. If the ball goes out to the wide areas, there, now shift across and go and press the ball aggressively. And that's the thing. When teams, we talk about shifting across, what teams will tend to do, they'll shift across, but nobody wants to go and make a tackle. So they'll go across here and they'll go and put some pressure here. Now, all of a sudden, you put that pressure on, the player might well panic, play a loose ball in here, and now you've got somebody like a Troy Deeney going into that area and causing the centre-backs a bit of a problem. Now, one of the things I noticed with Liverpool in a couple of games, and it happened against Bournemouth as well, they were often caught, they would often play with just the back two. So now balls get played in between the back two. So the centre forward, Callum Wilson did it quite well against Bournemouth. And in this area here, and they start to run the players. Now, in that game where I saw it wasn't Matip who played in there, it was Gomez. But the thing is the same. In the game against Watford, it was Lovren, and Deeney felt that he could bully him. So there was a little bit of that going on in there as well. So you've got to think about that too. So once you start to get the ball in these areas, the team who's defending against Liverpool, they've got to now start to see if they can win the ball in these areas here. Because if they can win the ball in these areas, they can then release the 9, and then we start getting other players getting involved in these areas here. And this could be the key to unlocking Liverpool when they with their overlapping fullbacks. Why? Because what you do is you starve the supply to these two, stop the ball going in here, and try to win the ball in here. So you might even allow the two centre backs to have the ball here and say, okay, we're nice and deep. We're not going to get pulled out of this area here. What are you going to do now?
And we're very narrow on the screen as well. So very, very narrow as well. Almost prepared, like you say, to allow them to play the ball to the fullbacks and then make the press. Yes,
yeah, but it's made very and you've got to remember, you've got to go off triggers and clues, body shapes of the ball passer, being ready to be on the front foot to make. So if the ball's there and the passing line has been cut off there, and you've got nice and tight in here, and it's going to go there, you can actually, these players here can actually do this, even this, get across in here, all right, and say, well, I'll tell you what, if they go out there and the ball's played there, we'll get across there and we'll stop them from going forward and make them go backwards. And once that becomes predictable, other players can start to drift into here. So if that ball goes back into here, say for example, now we have a problem because the centre back can be pressured. Okay, if we make these areas in here quite difficult to play in, and then from there you've got to be prepared to do the work to get back up here and then get back if you lose the ball. So if you go back to things like the principles of play, the idea of compactness, we can now start making the pitch look compact in one area of the pitch. So it might overload this area here and say, right, okay, I'm going to overload that. My deep line midfielder comes in here. We do that, and we do that. Now they've got a problem. They've got to go backwards. Then we can start to work out, how we're going to start to win the ball back. Because that's the most important thing is you're doing that because you want to win the ball back, and then you want to score. And as we saw against Watford, they did that quite well. And it was done. It was done quite well against Atletico Madrid. But I kind of looked at the Atletico Madrid performance and thought to myself, well, actually, Liverpool created a load of chances, and if they'd have scored those chances, well, Atletico wouldn't have been in the game to be able to win it. The Watford performance for me seemed a little bit more complete because they stayed in the game for a long time, and then they were able to nick the first goal and so on and so forth, and then it caused a problem. So for Liverpool,
yeah, it was very very much so. The Atletico Madrid game, say Liverpool had. I think even Jurgen Klopp came out afterwards and said that we've played really well. I can't fault us at all. Obviously, Alisson wasn't in goal for the Atletico Madrid game, which a lot of people are saying if he was, then it wouldn't have let those goals in, and Liverpool perhaps would have gone through. May make no difference at all now because the Champions League looks as possibly like it might not be completed. Okay, right. Let's look at. We want to now go back to the session that we had the other day because we put on a practice and you talked through it of how you would work with attacking fullbacks if you're a coach of any age group. We talked about some of the different things that you'd need to consider, the technical and the tactical and psychological side of things. Let's go back to that session again, Pete, and you're actually going to reverse it, aren't you? You're going to look at it from a defending point of view and how you would be working with the defensive players first and foremost, because we did say that on any practice you can if you're working on attackers, you can obviously look at your defenders and still coach them and still make sure they're motivated to play. But we're going to look at it from a defensive point of view if you were to face a team that had good attacking fullbacks.
Yes. So if I go back to the session, let's see. Oh,
don't forget as well, just while Pete's doing that, do get involved with the show. Do let us know your thoughts, and if you've got any questions, anything that you want to consider from your own coaching point of view, anything that you do differently, or anything that you would like us to go through, then do let us know. Comment across social media. We'll get some of those comments onto the screen, and we'll get interacting with you. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also about people sharing their views as well. How do they, do they think, well, actually, no, Pete, that's not, what happened. Because listen, again, as I said before, you think that what a team's doing, but sometimes you don't, So let's have a look. Hold on.
We're also, what we want to do is we want to put on shows around suggestions from you. So if you have a particular need or something that you'd love to see discussed on the show, we came up with a few suggestions during the show on Tuesday. So, can you still win a midfield battle by playing a 4-4-2? I know that's something that's on the list that we want to have a look at. Is the 4-4-2 still relevant? Can you still play with it and still compete against sides that are playing in different formations? But there may be something that you want us to discuss, so please get in touch. Let us know. You can message us throughout the week. You can get your messages into the show, and we will put those sessions on. And once we're out of quarantine, once we're out of isolation, we will be going to football clubs and putting on these sessions and filming them for Coach's Corner. So we could well be coming to your football club to put on a session with your team, whatever age group they may be. But tonight we're talking, as we said, about fullbacks and defending against attacking fullbacks. And we're going to go back to the session right now that we did on Tuesday and reverse it.
Yeah, so again, I think what's important is not to overcomplicate things. So if you've got a session that you worked on with regards to attacking in a certain area, you can just reverse that and look at the defending part of that as well. And the same session can be used to look at several different things. So we might start with, as you see on the screen here, where you might start, if you're working with, say, for example, you might put in your midfield players, the two wide attackers, then you'll have your front three here, okay, and get them to do the movements that they would do in the game. And if you look at the space that I've used sort of like almost like a full width. I've got a little channel here and here. And we start with, I put a goal with a goalkeeper in at this end, because again, if I want these players here to start looking at the idea of when we've won it back, how are we gonna score? We'd want that. What I might even do for them is I might even have a forward player for them to hit, because that's what they would be doing in the game. So if you look at the numbers, so I've got a back four in here and I've got a midfield four in here. Okay. Now, sometimes if we don't have all the players, we might have to adjust our session to what we do have. Now, I know that you might be playing with a 5 in there or so on and so forth. But what we might look at is, first of all, is when the ball goes out here, whose responsibility is it to go and shut that ball down? Okay. And how might we defend that? So in this practice, I would say, right, ball goes in there from the goalkeeper, or it can go into here, depending on where this player is. So let's look at the numbers of players that we're using. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 8 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now people might say, well, actually, the attacking side are vastly outnumbered. Well, if you think about it, most times in a situation where a team's going to play with a low block or what have you, you will be outnumbered in the attacking area. So what you're trying to do is get these players to react in the same way as they would in a game, and these players to understand that, yes, we are overloaded. We are going to overload them, and this is how we're going to how it might look. So if you look again, the area of the pitch that I've taken is here. So just inside the opposition's, just inside the opposition's defending half, and the ball can be played into here, or what have you. All right. So it would be just very, very similar to a game. So we now start to think about stopping the ball going into the spaces that are in here. So if, say, for example, this player drops in here, whose responsibility? We might start about the idea of shielding the ball into that player, maybe going tight, tucking across, it goes in here, and getting nice and compact. We might talk a little bit about that.
So can I just ask, Pete? When you talk about that, looking at it from a practice point of view, we're focusing on the defending team. So a bit like when we were talking on Tuesday about the fullbacks and the fact that to start with, we would say that they can't be tackled. They're in their zone, and they've got 2 touches to then decide how they're going to move forward and play that ball. And then we progressed so that you would allow players in there to put them under pressure. And we talked about different age groups. The fact that if you were Frank's team, Merstham, you would start with that because it was more relevant. You want to put them under pressure. You didn't have them for as much time. When we're talking about looking at it from a defensive point of view, we would build up to these. So we're going to talk through the stages of how we'd start the session. And actually, in your mind, you'd be thinking, well, I will start like this, and then I'll make adjustments to either make it more realistic or to challenge the defenders more.
Yeah, exactly. So I might do some little things like this because, as I said, Watford had a player who sat here, so we might actually make the practice look like that. So we've got this player, who in our team who will do this role here, who will just protect the back four, and that's actually quite an important role in this practice. So the numbers in here, although important, aren't supremely important. If we needed this number 9, say, to just drop in here, which he might do in the game. Well, we'd get him to do that as well, so he could see the defenders. He wants to be able to see the faces of the defenders here, or the attackers, sorry, as they're coming forward. So if the ball gets played here and we want to press it, that player might press it, which means that we do this and here, and this number 4 comes across here and says, right, okay, you're not playing in here. You have to play here. So if that's played, whose responsibility? Well, as the ball is traveling, the 3 might come across into here. Say, for example, if they spotted it quickly enough. As that happens, 4 drops in here, 6 shuffles across, 5 shuffles across, 2 shuffles across.
And when we talk about coaching techniques, when you're coaching this, you've got various options, obviously, but as a coach, you could actually let the game play to start with. So say, right, I've set this up, let's play, let's go for it, and then you can make your adjustments. So you may be, even in real time, when we talk about coaching, you could be just having a word with, for example, the number 6 and saying, actually, what I want to see from you is I want you to come across. So when we talk about these practices that are put on, people may be watching now and saying, well, actually, there's an awful lot of information that I've got to get to my players, and I'm coaching a younger team, and they won't want to listen to me for that amount of time. But you can get your information to players in so many different ways, so you don't actually have to sit and explain all this before we start.
Of course not. No, of course not. Because basically what you do is you work on the bits that you want to work on. So say, for example, if we know that the ball's going to definitely go out here all the time, we're going to work with this player and say this player on how to double team a player in these wide areas. Okay, can we get there? Can we delay the player, and then can this player maybe steal it from the front, and then we can attack from there? And we might just work on that bit to start off with. But the most important thing, I think, with anything like this is to see what the players do in a practice like this. Because you can't, all this stuff that I'm saying here is fine, or could be fine. But I don't know. I don't know how the players are going to react to my practice until I start the practice. So these would be sort of like some of the ideas. So I'd be thinking about, okay, we're going to coach the bit when it goes out here. Then if we get that one right, and then this player starts to cheat, say for example, and a hole is left, then we might have to deal with that because the ball could get played through here. How would we deal with that? How would we deal with if we're in these positions? Say for example, how would we deal with let's change that over. How would we deal if we've got players dropping into that area and the number 4 has to deal with that? What's the number 4's roles and responsibilities in that scenario? So all these things we could actually coach, but throughout a practice, and it might be that we might just work on this bit here to get this player better at 1v1s and better at delaying. Because if this player keeps diving in, well, then we end up with these sort of situations where the ball's played in. Oops, that's not the ball, that's the player. Ball played in here, and now we've got a problem where we've got players running at us because the players will drop into the holes, So this player's role here, his first role, might be, can you get there and just delay the play, which allows us to do this and get across and force the opposition to go backwards where we can retain our shape.
And there's
and we don't get pulled about.
Really important point to make that you made there as well, which was when we're coaching sessions like this, it doesn't have to all be done in one practice. So this could be a theme that if this was a problem and you were finding that you weren't defending well against teams that were pushing forward, this could be done over a number of sessions. And like you said, Pete, you could work on just closing down using 2 players first to getting that right, and then look at the positions of the other players on the pitch. So this is not just about getting everything right in one practice.
No, of course not. No, because again, you really do have to think about how much time do you actually have with your players. So for some coaches, they've only got an hour, and having an hour isn't enough to get as much detailing as you want. Now, remember, this is something else you've got to think about. If you're talking about working with younger players, we might now start to look at some of the skill sets that they might need to have. So this player, this number 3 here, we might need to have to teach the player how to be a better 1v1 defender. And what might that look like in practice? So if we take this and we say, right, okay, we'll have a practice, and it would, and I'm kind of almost going a little bit off of topic here. Not off of topic, but
that's fine. We like that. It's fine.
Taking it to another thing. So here is now your practice area. Say, for example, this might be your practice area here. But for me, and again, this is just a personal thing for me, where I kind of get a little bit not. I probably, yeah. I look at things slightly differently. Is that if I'm going to work 1v1 with this player, so the ball, so that's the practice area there, because if you look at the pitch, this is what you're looking for the player to do. So the player may start from an area like this, and as the ball's played in, comes in here. And the role of this player is, can they get the ball over that line? Because you're talking about them getting in here. But if this player is able to now hold that player up, you then have to ask, well, why is that player holding that person up? What is their role? What do we want them to do? Well, they can't always win the ball. So what we have to teach them is, okay, if you can't win it, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to keep hold of you're going to keep hold of that player until another player can come in. And where might that player be coming from? Well, they could be coming from here in the recovery. They could be coming from here, from the side, because that's where, say, for example, your midfield player might be coming from. So you then look at your practice area, and your practice area now looks a little different. So you might now say, well, actually, let's elongate that out. And now here's our 1v1 or 2v2, 1v1, 2v2 practice. So the ball will come in from, oops, my bad. So the ball might come in from, oops, let's do this. Okay. So the ball comes in from here. This player might be here. As the ball's played in, this player starts making their run. So, not when the player has the ball, but as the ball's travelling. So now their job is, can I hold this player up to stop them from getting into an area or a little goal area here? And the reason why I want that little goal area is because what I want this player to start working on their body shape. Where do you show? Do you show inside, outside, etc., etc.? Okay. So now, that means this player can come in, and now we have a little 2v1 or 1v2. So now this player has to defend that until this player can come in, because that's what you'd be waiting for. You'd be waiting for help to arrive. So you can decide where you want to place this player. You can put them here. So as the ball gets played in, say, for example, so we go back to where we were, ball's here. Maybe that player's there, say, for example. Don't have the exact what's in, but we go in there, and the ball's played in, travelling. Okay, as that happens, that player can come into here. Then this player's job now is to make sure that that ball doesn't go into this player here, who can quite easily score there. Can you get that player to maybe go down the line, hold them up, which allows this player to recover?
We just had a message actually from Mike. I'll read a few of the messages out in a moment. Please keep your messages coming in tonight across social media. But Mike says, like Wan-Bissaka did to Raheem Sterling 1v1. And the reason why I'll read that one out first is just because that seems relevant to what you're talking about now when we talk about the body shape that you want the defender to have with the attacking player, with the fullback, and I think that's a really good point from Mike. That's similar. Yeah, we saw that Wan-Bissaka and Raheem Sterling. That was one hell of a duel, by the way. When those two went up against each other. Another question, Pete, we've got is from Lee, who says, I'm just going to read this one out. So it says, when are we showing inside or outside? Will it ever change? And if so, why?
Yeah, we can show inside, and again, this will always depend on how you as a team decide you want to play. So you might decide that you want to show inside because that's where your strength of numbers are. So it will be a case of, well, if I show inside, this player here, he's going to be in there, and he's going to go as soon as that player comes in, he's going in, bang, I'm going to win that. I'm going to win that. And then from there, we then look at how we get out of this. So it might be we've won it there, we play in there, and now we play in here. Say, for example, that would be one example. The other thing could be that, and this is something that and that's probably because I'm a little bit old-fashioned in this way. If the ball for me is in this area here, I'm saying I personally want the defender to show down the line. That's for me. Unless this player is absolutely a worldie at going down the line, I want to show him down the line, because I'm thinking that this player is. I'm doing the wrong fella, ain't I? This player.
It's Friday night. It's fine.
I haven't even had my glass of red wine yet. This player. We want him away from the goal if we can, but what we've got to be able to do, we've got to be able to be make it difficult for the player. We've got to really make it difficult so that if he does manage to get a cross in, that cross is a poor cross, because especially if this player has got like really good pace or something like that, that could get them in behind you. But with the way that players are nowadays, they'll get the ball. If they come inside in these sort of areas, and you've seen the goals where they come inside and they just bend them into the far corner, and the goalkeepers look like they need a stepladder to get to them. So for me, these deep areas, show outside. Further up here, maybe show inside. But that's very much down to how you how you coach your team. Your team might be well versed showing inside, and we win everything when the ball comes in air, and the players are well disciplined and drilled to stop knowing that if the player gets it in here, especially if they're an inverted wide player, that they're not going to get a shot off.
And is that, just to ask you a question about defending, particularly the area that you're talking about, that's why the likes of Wan-Bissaka play for Manchester United. That's why the fullbacks play for Liverpool, because their decision making. There's obviously certain layers. We talk about technical and tactical side of the game, but their decision making. Because as a coach and somebody that's coaching players, you can only have that effect on a training session. You can have a great effect, but when managers talk about the players go out, they have to not just do what they've been coached, but there are times in a game where you can't coach for 90 minutes on the sidelines. Players will have to make decisions, and good players will look to go inside, outside, and that's going back to Lee's point. Players will have to make their decisions, and the better players are at the top of the game because they'll make better decisions when defending of when to show inside, when to show outside.
Yeah, I mean, thanks Lee, and thanks Mike for your questions. Those are really good questions there, and and I think when you're coaching, and I think this is something that we're starting to we talk a lot about more on coaching courses now about players being better decision makers, and I think that's the key thing that you want your players to be. They've got to have the ability to make the decision on the pitch, because the way I see it is this. And I was doing some coaching last year, and I would talk to the coaches around me, and I'd say, if we've done our work well, Tuesday and Thursday, really, if there's stuff that we see that's not happening, it's because we haven't coached it. And we shouldn't be moaning at the players if they're doing stuff that we haven't coached and we haven't shown them. And players don't do things because they want to they want to annoy us. They do it sometimes because they're not quite sure, or they don't have a certain skill set for them to be able to do certain things yet. But our job is to recognise that as coaches and to be able to observe what's happening in the game. If we notice, say, for example, that our number 3 is allowing the number 2 to come inside all the time, we have to ask ourselves a question: is that causing us a problem? Well, if it's not, and this number 8 has recognised that and gone, I tell you what, every time that player comes inside, I'm going to go and win that, and we get it and we win it and we play and then we get a shot at goal. Well, you don't need to really worry about that. The thing that you might think about, even if you're saying show down the line, you've got to observe what's the upshoot of this player here showing inside at that particular moment. Have these two had a conversation and said, actually, I've noticed that every time he comes inside, he does blah, or he's weak coming in on his wrong foot, so I'm going to show him inside. Now, if the player can work that out, wow, fantastic. Because that's what you want. You want your players to have that knowledge. You want your players to be able to make those decisions on the pitch. Because if they don't, again, you're spending all your time jumping up and down on the sideline, and that shouldn't be the way coaching is. Coaching is about what you do on Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's what training's supposed to be about.
Okay,
in my opinion.
I've got a question for you. So we were talking at the beginning of the show about Liverpool and their use of fullbacks, and we did say that it wasn't just what you did out wide, it was also the players in the middle. So Liverpool have some very talented forward players, and Mane and of course Salah and Firmino, and their movement was excellent, and that created the space for the fullbacks. Are we saying that this is just one way of combating attacking fullbacks, but is there work to be done from a defensive point of view from maybe the centre backs to stop that space, or is it really down to what we're doing now to stop it from getting to the point where the space is already being created and the problems are in that final third?
Well, yes, I think the thing that you want to be able to do is you want to make what you want to do is you want to, as Liverpool actually do, is you want to set traps as well. You want to set traps for the team that's got the ball. So you want to make it so that they don't get the ball into the most dangerous area. And the most dangerous area is here. So let's have a look. So this, I still think this is still the same today as it was, as it has ever been. Is that's the most dangerous area on the part where most goals are originated from. So if we can stop the ball from getting in there in the first place, we've got half a chance of being successful. But we've also got to remember that in 90 minutes or 60 minutes or however long it is your team's playing for, the ball is going to get into there. Now, what happens when the ball gets into there is that's when, as you were saying there, Ben, we have to teach, say, these players here now to be to have the ability to be patient and not to dive in and not to give away free kicks, for the player who's in front to be able to come and take the ball from the front and win the ball and cause this player in here a bit of a problem. We now need to start thinking about, well, in these areas here, are we going to get really tight on these players and frustrate them, make it difficult for them? Don't dive in. All the things we talk about at younger ages, watch the ball, don't watch the feet. Those are little gems that you can give to players early on in their careers and early on in their coaching to help them to be better when they get to this level. Because all these players in the top teams, they know all of those sort of things, but sometimes the occasion, the crowd, the where you are in the league, that sort of stuff can get to players, and they forget some of the basics. And that's that's why we love the game, because players make mistakes, not because they want to make mistakes, but sometimes it's the occasion that gets to them at the higher level, because they just lose concentration for a split second. The reason why Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, Leicester, the way they're doing, why they do well, their players are able to concentrate for longer periods of time. That's what the good teams do. They make less mistakes. They don't give the ball away as often. Yada yada yada, and we go on from there. But as you say, making it difficult here makes it difficult to get the ball in here. But then when it does get in here, we make it doubly difficult, because this is where emergency defending comes in, cover and balance, all that sort of stuff comes in now, and we stop them from causing us a problem and keep them going back towards their own goal. And we want to keep the opposition going that way, not that way, if we possibly can. And if they're going sideways as well, that gives us a chance to regroup and get bodies across to help us to defend the ball.
So when we're talking about motivating players on a practice, we've talked through much of the practice here and how we'd set it out and the different elements to it. So the different side of the technical and tactical side of the game, where you would coach, depending on, of course, always on the ability of your players and what they need. When we just go back to the start of the practice, the motivation, how you'd set that up. We've seen how you set it up on the screen, but how would you set it up as far as your talk to the players? So would you set this up as with the specific areas, but what would the attacking team be looking to do, and what would the defending team be looking to do? Because obviously we've talked about working within the practice with individual players, but as a whole, how would you set that up? I'm sure coaches would be really interested to know what you'd say to the players as far as how they go about that practice session from the start.
Okay, so there might be a number of things that I might do, and we talk about rewarding teams for certain things that we want to see. So I might say to the team, the defending team, if you can win the ball in this area, in this middle zone here, say for example, and you score, it's worth 2, okay, or maybe worth 3. If you manage to get the ball and you win it here, and you manage to play into your forward player and you score from that, that's worth 2 is here, 3 is here. And the reason why I say that is because in this practice, we're looking at the low block. Now, what you might say to the attacking team, you might give them something. You might say, right, if you can score from a cross, it's worth 2 or 3, 2 goals, say for example. If you score by combining with another player in the final third here, it's worth, say, 4, say for example. So, and then any other goal is worth 1. So we're looking at the players playing the ball into this area. We want to encourage that one, and we also want to encourage that one as well. So both of these will have high. So this is 2. This one will be 4 because it's harder to do, and we want to see if the players will do that. And then the players decide how they're gonna score. Are they gonna just score an ordinary goal, or are they gonna try and get a goal from across? I would also get, when the ball's played out here, I want this player to attack realistically. So I wouldn't want them just to go down here. If they can come inside as well, do that as well, because that's something that your defending team will face. So how do we now deal with the player who comes from outside to in? Okay, and that might be something that we would look at as well. So if the player does that and then combines and does that, and we get in and they manage to score, that's worth 4. So now we have to start to look at, well, how do we stop that? And, it's those kind of things that we might start to do around inspiring the players to try and score. Now, one of the great things about any practice, by having goals in the practice, if you can, is the fact that players always want to score. Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. If they just got to run it across the line and you're defending, well, very soon they'll get bored of that. But if they know that they can score a goal, they'll try and score.
And one thing we always say, and we'll bring it back to this again, is you've got to know your players. So these practices that we're giving you examples of now can easily be adapted to, I'm sure, if we had time, any age group and any scenario as far as numbers of players. You always hear people say that as well. People put on these coaching sessions, but they've got the perfect amount of players. But you can adjust. So we heard you talk at the very beginning of the session practice that you could actually, if you were losing, if you had a player less, you could adapt and say, well, actually, we just wouldn't have that part of the practice. So, for example, the two centre backs may be able to play the ball out without any pressure because you've got less players in the practice. Yeah. So it's always about your team and what your team needs, first and foremost, and how many players you've got. You can always adapt to the situation.
Of course, and I think this is the thing. Is I think we kind of got to think about it this way as well. Is especially us as grassroots coaches, we don't always have all the players we want. Sometimes we may not have as many players as this. Imagine we turn up and you're saying, right, okay, we're going to do a session and we want to work on our team defending, but we haven't got all the players that we want. Well, sometimes you might then just make a smaller area, and let's have a look. You could have a practice just using something like.
I thought I'd like to put you under pressure, especially as we're going into the last 4 minutes of the show tonight. I thought, let's put Pete under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, why not? So you might look at something like this. Let me have a look at this one. Right, we might start to have a look at something like a defending zone practice with very few players. So we might start looking at something. Oops, no, sorry, I didn't want to do that. We might start looking at something like this. So ball played out into a player here. Can these two players get across? And they've got to decide, do they defend that zone or do they stay in their zone here? And that's, you might only have a couple of players for a practice like this. So let's have a little look. And I think this is some of the things. Let's have a look at what that might look like. So ball played in. Now we start getting ideas around, how can you defend in groups? Now you're talking about something like that, which is a very, very simple kind of practice. You've got, they've got 2 goals to defend. They've got 2 goals to defend. Can they win it and score in the goals there? So, if we take that back, okay. So remember what I said. You may not have the amount of players that you want. This is a 6-player practice, okay, working on defensive responsibility. So, ball played in. You've got a recovery player as well. You've got players coming into the zone and making the play predictable. Can they win the ball back? All those kind of things that you can do if you kind of just what's the word? I'm going to just show you all this so it looks a little bit more realistic. So let me have a look. Here we go. So, oops, the ball's very big in this one. So if you look at the practice here, you'll see it's a basic 3-on-3, and there's your compactness there. Player can go and press the ball. Player comes receive it, you can press it again. And if you look at the players, what they're doing, they're saying, right, this player's not getting the ball. And if the ball does go in there, this player can get across there, delay, which allowed these 2 players to come back in here. So you can, again, a small-sided practice when lots of players haven't turned up. So quite often when I go out on visits, coaches will say, I don't have the amount of players that I would normally have. That's when you have to start to become creative as a coach. What kind of things can you do with the players that you have got? Your players, what they need to work on. And sometimes having less players actually gives you more of an opportunity to teach your players some of those technical and tactical things that you often don't get a chance to teach them when you've got all your players.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as we said, you can adjust it to your your team and your, the amount of you players you've got. And I think finally, just to finish off the show, I'm sure this will be something that we say quite a lot, but you say it many times, Pete, when you talk about practices. It's all about knowing your players. What do your players need? Because for everybody, that practice looks different.
Of course. And I think that's the most important thing. Know your players. Plan for your players. Don't just put on a practice session because, I've just got that out of a book, or I've just got that off the internet, or I've just seen Peter Augustine do it, blah, blah, blah. No, Peter Augustine is not does not know everything about football. He knows a little bit. And as I always say to people, this is not the way. This is just a way. And I'm sure that the coaches who listen to this have got 101 different ways that they can do. They can look at this and say, I don't know if I do that with my players or whatever. That's fine. But what would you do with your players? What skill sets do they have? What do you need to teach them? Those are the types of things that you should be asking yourself. If I don't have this amount of players, what would I do? If I do have, what would I do? That's your planning there. And also the ability to watch what's going on, to be able to observe. Don't go running in the first time you see the player make a mistake. Let's see if the player can reset themselves and say, right, okay, I know they did that wrong last time. Can they self-correct?
Yeah.
But yeah,
absolutely. And so again, keep your comments coming in to us. Let us know what you would like to see on our next show. Our next Coach's Corner show is on Wednesday night at 8:00. And we'll let you know during the week what the topic's going to be. But please get in touch with us across social media. You can message us directly. You can put your comments underneath here and let us know what you want to see on the show over the coming weeks. We said once we are out of self-isolation, we will be going around to your football clubs and we'll be putting on sessions and seeing how it works in a real environment. So do let us know if you need some help, you need some support. That's what we're here for, the grassroots football community. If you need us, we'll come and see you and we'll come and put on a practice. But keep thinking about what your players need. Peter, thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thanks everybody who tuned in. It's always a pleasure to try and talk football, especially at times like this.
Yeah, one comment that I didn't read out that I've just seen from Mike, who says Mendy, who plays for Manchester City in that style. I'm not sure what part of the show that was for, but thanks. I mean, that's a nice way to end. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Mendy as well. Right, that's it tonight. Thank you ever so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already to our YouTube channel and smash a like on this video. Tell someone about the show. And we'll see you back for Coach's Corner next Wednesday at 8:00. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, stay safe, everyone.